welcome everybody. Excuse my voice, I was at a wedding in St. Louis last night, so I might have a bit of party girl voice. We're gonna get through this. We're gonna kick things off talking to Sharon Creek from the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild, but first we got a couple thank yous. A big thank you to Dogfish Head and Ollie, a Next Glass company, both repeat sponsors, presenting sponsors of Brew Talks. An additional thanks to our other sponsors, Arrive, Distribution, the E-Premise Group, Encompass, Malt Europe, Pneumatic Scale Angelus, Raised Beverage Group, and Strike Visuals. Lots of awesome people helping making this happen. We have 4 conversations planned today, but as I said, our first one is going to be with Sharon here, who's the Executive Director of the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild. Some of the proceeds from today are going to the Guild, so it's only proper we see where that money's going, what you guys are up to. So let's kick things off. Sharon, what is the craft beer scene like in Tennessee?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it, and thank you guys so much for your support, for coming out to this event, and for supporting, hopefully, your local guild at home as well. I'm Sharon Cheek. I'm the Executive Director of the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild. We represent 70 of Tennessee's breweries from one side of the state to the other. The craft beer scene is kicking ass here right now. I have to say, we're churning out some really good beer. Our breweries are expanding, and we're just, we're rocking. And I hope that y'all that are here for CBC have a great time and get to experience some of that.
This is my first time here, and as soon as I got in the Uber, our driver was like, the breweries here are doing great, we love them, so it's definitely ringing true. When you're having conversations with members right now, we're a couple of years past when the pandemic started, and we're still seeing some changes in the marketplace. What are your members saying are the biggest issues they're tackling right now?
Okay, definitely the biggest issues that we're tackling right now. A lot of you feel the pain of franchise reform. So that's always a hot button issue. That's a national issue. One thing that's unique to Tennessee that y'all don't share with us is that Tennessee has the highest wholesale tax in the country. We are at almost $40 a barrel. So just for some perspective, give me some booze, right? So just a little perspective there. Even if you cut it in half, we're still in the highest 5 states in the nation for wholesale tax. So come on, y'all. Drink some Tennessee beer while you're here. Help us out.
So you guys just came to the end of a cycle for legislative session. You had 2 big ones this year. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys were able to get done?
Oh yeah, we had a really big one last year too. Do you mind if I touch on that?
Of course, please.
So prior to last year in Tennessee, you could self-distribute your beer in the county where you brewed it, and that's it. So in Tennessee, we have several cities that straddle multiple counties. You couldn't distribute through that whole city. You had to stay in your county. So we actually partnered with the wholesalers to come up with an agreement for some limited statewide self-distribution, and we are delighted over how it's turned out. I've already heard from several breweries that have had distributors knocking on their door because they're getting out there, they're showing what they've got. So that was last year. This year, our big issue was canned cocktails in grocery stores. And many of you have won or lost this fight in your states, but here in Tennessee, it was about putting hard alcohol in the grocery store. And I think I'm gonna say that we won the battle, but not the war, because we know it's coming back. And for those of you who have managed to keep it out of your grocery stores, it's gonna rear its ugly head again. But for now, Team Beer is here to stay and here to win. We defined beer as not including distilled spirits and not including wine. So we'll see what they do with that. But I was really proud of the fact that as of right now, you cannot buy Jack and Coke in the grocery store. So
that's we've seen at other states where they are starting to get more of these allowances. And we just heard at MBWA them talking about this is a big beer priority this year. So great to see you guys are getting some things done. You also got a third year of funding for Farm to Tap. Can you talk a little bit about that partnership?
Oh, yeah, thank you for asking. So Farm to Tap started 3 years ago out of a relationship with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. And we wanted to figure out a way to encourage more Tennessee breweries to use Tennessee farm products in their beer. And likewise, we wanted to keep farming cool. Agriculture and commerce, that's our state motto, and that's also our biggest industry in the state is agriculture. Thank you for that. Okay. And so we received funding now for 3 years, which is over $1.15 million to the Guild to manage this partnership called Farm to Tap. And we do happy hours, we do special events, we do all kinds of things to put farmers and brewers in the room together and really just let them organically grow relationships.
As someone from a farm town, I appreciate that. I think farming is always cool. So now looking forward, what is the Guild prioritizing for what you guys want to get done?
Oh, I just want to hang on. We are, our session literally just ended, so we are regrouping and thinking about what our next move is. Of course, we'd love to lower the wholesale tax, but in Tennessee, beer is governed at the local level as opposed to at the state level. So I believe it's 80% of our wholesale tax goes to the communities where that beer is brewed. So we need to be very careful with how we address wholesale tax. Gotta make sure that we keep the cities and counties whole, so, yeah.
So let's wrap this up. We're in Nashville. What is the one thing you want people to take away from being here for CBC and being in your state?
Have fun. Drink Tennessee beer. Have a great time. When you drink Tennessee beer, you're supporting Tennessee farmers. So I think that would be my message. But yeah, there's a variety of styles. There's a variety of cultures and communities. You'll see our brewers love to collaborate just as y'all do in your home states.
And you guys have a Guild event during CBC today, right? You have a party?
Actually, the majority of the breweries that have beer at the CBC welcome reception, over 30 out of the 40 are from Tennessee. So if you want a taste of Tennessee, come on down to the CBC welcome reception.
Great. Well, I think we should cheers to that.
Cheers. Thank you.
Joining us today, we're talking about two seemingly contradictory trends that we're seeing in beer. We have low and non-alcoholic beer that just keeps on growing. And then we have those more higher ABV beers. So to talk about that, we have Bill Schufelt, co-founder of Athletic Brewing. Hi, Bill.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes. And then from Massachusetts representing, we have Colleen Quinn, the CEO of Greater Good Imperial Brewing.
Hey there.
Yeah, we're getting both ends of the spectrum back to back. And then crossing all levels of ABV, we have Sam Calagione from Dogfish Head. Welcome.
Excited to be here with you. So.
Yes.
We went to the same high school, not the same year.
We have to point that out at every Brew Talks. We are both Hogger alums.
It's a term of endearment, hoggers.
Yes.
We're hoggers.
All right.
We actually went to school with a farm, which you were just talking about.
It's true.
How cool
I was being genuine in my support of farms. We had farms in high school. All right, we're going to kick things off. And like I mentioned at the top, these trends seem to contradict themselves. But we've talked about this before, and there's actually some sort of commonality that's driving these trends. I want to hear from each of you, what is the through line for what's driving consumers to be drinking your products across that spectrum? Anyone is welcome to go first.
Well, for us, I think quality and taste is of the utmost importance. I think specifically quality over quantity. So we hear a lot of our consumers talking about fewer but better beers, and kind of treating a higher ABV beer as a little bit of an indulgence that they can get after. We also hear about value as part of the equation, thinking about kind of booze for your buck. And then, just exploration and trying something new. Those are probably the key things.
Mm-hmm. Bill, what crossover are you seeing with your consumers that are drinking non-alc and some of those higher ABV beers?
Yeah, I think athletic products probably sync up really well with that. If people are drinking fewer high alcohol beers in those very specific reward occasions, non-alcoholic beer really opens up the spectrum in other days of the week for other volume occasions and new occasions that the beer world was probably missing over the past few decades. And we're really excited to make higher quality beers than the non-alcoholic world has ever experienced at the low end of the spectrum. And also, we're really committed to driving new people into the category who may not have discovered craft beer yet, who may not be beer drinkers at all, but this is a really accessible entry point for people to come to the category. So that's kind of where athletic comes into the category.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, I did a little check-in, looked at different sales moments in our history. So we're 28 years in at Dogfish, and right out of the gates in the 90s, we had core beers in each of the three categories that we're talking about today. So in the early years, it'd be like Lawnmower Light, lower than 5 ABV, and then Raison d'Etre, Indian Brown, mid ABV, and then 90 Minute and Midas, and high ABV. And it really was high ABV that got our little brewery in the middle of nowhere on the map, kind of in that second generation era of craft beer growing. And it's interesting because the ability to get bigger format packages to market as a small brewery really aided us in the era when Imperial IPA started taking off, and people were fearless to try beer wine hybrids that were $10-15 for a 750 ml. And it's coming back again. Maybe, as we'll talk about later, it's more of a 19.2 single serve pack, but that kind of accelerated the higher ABV trend at two different moments. And for us, for now, our growth in the beer part of our business is more in high ABV. We have Sequench, which is the best-selling sour in America, low ABV but not growing, whereas 90 Minute and Citrus Squall over 8 ABV is what's growing for us.
Before we go further, I want to let everyone know we do have a text line. If you wanted to send anybody questions, both in person or on the live stream, you can text 617-336-8560. That'll work throughout today, so you can ask some questions to all of our panelists. I want to talk about Greater Good for a second. You guys make all imperial beers, those higher ABV, it's all 8% or above beers, right? What was interesting when we prepped for this was we also talked about how people looking for a higher ABV are also speaking to moderation. Can you talk a little bit about what it is about the higher ABV that still speaks to moderation at Greater Good?
Yeah, for sure. I think, it might seem non-intuitive, to think about high ABV beers as part of a moderation story, but I do think it's quality over quantity, fewer and better. I might not be drinking as much, but when I am drinking, I want it to, get me there faster or be, more flavorful than another alcoholic beverage that I could drink. And so we certainly see a lot of people, whether it's in our tap room or buying our beers, that, they might have an athletic beer, a few days a week, but they're, indulging themselves with a Greater Good beer as well.
Yeah. You talk about that a lot, Bill, when you guys are talking about athletic, is that balance of you're not just drinking non-alcoholic beers sometimes. Your consumers are also drinking alcoholic beers.
For sure. I think the common thread runs through all of our breweries, for sure. And it's different occasions, it's different flavors and everything. But we do have data, both from our own proprietary data and supported by Nielsen, that over 80% of our customers do drink alcoholic beer at other occasions during the week, whether that's 1 or 2 days a week, 1 day a month. It is giving people more occasions and more beer for our partners to deliver, both in the middle and the third tier. we are seeing new people come into the category too, and then go to other parts of craft as well. So athletic can really be a discovery point for the craft beer world. Some of those data points are where the beer world tends to be closer to like 60-40 or 70-30 male-female. Athletics customer base in the non-alcoholic drinker is much closer to 50-50. It's about 15 percentage points closer to down the middle. Prior to, say, 2017, the average non-alcoholic beer drinker, it was something like 75% of non-alcoholic beer drinkers were over age 45 as of only 5 or 6 years ago, and now 75% are under age 42. So where the craft audience, I heard Bart at a conference, I think it was in January, reference the craft beer drinker has aged a bit over the past 5 years, like 1.5 years. I think this is a way to pressure that age lower, get new legal drinking age consumers into the category, have them explore a wide range of flavors where non-alcoholic beer used to be just lagers. So they could start with anything, I mean, even like a Radler, and then go anywhere throughout anyone's portfolio in the craft world.
Yeah. We are almost in the busy summer selling season. I want to hear from each of you. We can start with you, Sam. What are you hearing from wholesalers? What are they looking for to put on the shelf this year?
And so as you think about the trends across these three kind of ABV categories that we're chatting about for this session, I think it's like a tale of two cities, like what's happening in tasting room breweries, which is the majority of the craft brewers of America, and what's happening in three-tier distribution, because the consolidation of all three tiers is very real. And as a brewery that proudly has our own tasting rooms, where we're doing tons of innovation and serving up a super wide breadth of beers, spirits, full proof, canned cocktails, everything we make. What we are seeing now more than ever is our distributors are like, go deeper with fewer concepts. You can be as creative as possible. In fact, we want you to be well differentiated in this moment when there's a lot of sameness of chasing trends or just recognizing that IPA is now half essentially of all the beers out there, but they're like, go deep with something that's easy within a sentence, and Jen and Zach can speak to this, of being easy for our distributor salesperson to describe why it deserves its place on a shelf, frankly, that's being marginalized, whether it's seltzer or spirits-based RTD, that we're still in the business of. You got to be really clear, and I think I love your guys' breweries' names because that's a great example of a quick few syllables describing your points of differentiation. And so we try to do that with our innovations as well, whether it's citrus squalls, it's like perfect storm between a cocktail and a beer, or 90-minute, 9% ABV, 90 IBUs. So we're asking for fewer, deeper innovations in terms of three-tiered distro, but we're having fun throwing shit at the wall in our own locations.
Yeah. Colleen, what are you hearing? What do people want?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Sam's saying. I would boil it down to probably focus and proven successes. So similar to what you were saying, Sam, like we do a lot of innovation in our tap room. We experiment a lot. We don't take all of that to the market. We like to test things in our tap room and then, bring it. And also just focus in terms of managing our portfolio proactively and not getting that pushback from the wholesaler or the retailer. So when we are bringing new innovation, contextualizing it within what series it's in or what seasonal it's in or what is it replacing, and just being really clear and focused about those brand priorities, because shelf space is shrinking, and unless we guide and kind of prioritize what we're trying to push, somebody else will do it for us, and so better to be proactive with that.
Bill, non-alcoholic beer is one of the segments that's actually gaining shelf space in a lot of places. How has that conversation changed with wholesalers? What are they looking for from that segment now?
Yeah, and just touching on what both of you also said, definitely echo the focus and the authenticity, and the past few years has definitely had hyper innovation and trend chasing, as Sam said, and retailers and distributors alike want to see really focused, authentic efforts. So definitely don't want to repeat anything you guys said, but they want to see people really put marketing behind the beers that people are famous for, what they're most well known for, what their consumers know and are going to the store for. And so people want to hear marketing commitments and that you're going to be out in the world talking about it. So no matter what tier of brewery you are, if you're a small local brewery be driving people to your tap room. If you're a regional brewery with distribution, have a really thoughtful distribution plan and a good local marketing plan. And then same for national breweries. I've taken a lot of learnings from Sam over the years. He's such a thoughtful leader in the craft beer world for so long. I read somewhere sometime you have to tell people over and over again and be far more consistent than you think, because people just need to hear it over and over again. And I think the craft beer world needs to get back to building brands really consistently rather than the hyper velocity of innovation. And I think that goes right through to the non-alcoholic beer category. It's like people want authentic brands that people are really excited to make. For non-alcoholic beer to sell well, it has to be different than it was, call it 5+ years ago. It has to be a better quality, better marketed beer than what used to be on the shelf for it to sell. And but in that, there's a lot of opportunity if it's high quality, if it's well focused, and just like anywhere in the craft beer world, there is a lot of opportunity out there.
Colleen, I think some people might be surprised by the range of beers that you have at Greater Good while still sticking to Imperial. How much education do you have to do about the Imperial style and its range?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us it starts with just educating on what imperial beers are. We did some consumer research last year and found that the vast majority of people that we surveyed didn't know what the word imperial meant in the context of beer. So first and foremost, it's, you know, educating on that as a concept. And then within the segment of imperial beers, you know, people mostly associate it with imperial IPAs or imperial stouts, right? You get, you know, and that's because that's what the most, you know, majority of imperial beers are. You can either hide that booze behind a lot of hops, or you can hide that booze behind a lot of malt. And you don't see a lot of kind of, we'd say traditionally lower ABV styles getting imperialized. But for us, we do imperial beers exclusively day in and day out, and candidly it would just get a little bit boring for my brewers if they were only brewing imperial IPAs. So we do a lot to innovate. We just launched an Imperial Blonde as a new year-round offering. We just released a little bit before Cinco de Mayo an Imperial Mexican Lager, which I think when I asked my brewers to have a go at that, they looked at me like I had 3 heads. But you know, we're having a lot of fun with it, and you know, it's really great in the tap room, and then we're able to kind of scale some of those out into distribution as well.
Bill, now that the non-alc category has become a lot bigger than it was a few years ago, how much education are you still having to do now?
Still a really highly surprising amount of education. If you ask someone to draw on a blank line, one non-alcoholic brand in the country that's not one of the famous legacy brands, it's really hard to do. So I think athletic brewing awareness is still under 20% nationally, and so we have a lot of work to do, but we find that exciting, and there are a lot of great regional breweries starting to make non-alcoholic beer and build it up in their area too, which we're super excited about. And the category looks so different than it did 5 years ago. We've got 5 amazing teammates in the audience here, including our co-founder John, but it's like a total dedication to a differentiated level of quality that there ever has been, and really just getting it up to where the rest of the craft beer world has been for a while.
I got a question, Bill. When you mentioned that 80% of your customers also drink beers with alcohol, do your breweries in Cali and Connecticut have the same TTB like regulatory environment as the rest of us that make alc? And if so or not, do you could you serve beers that have alcohol so that when you think of those 80% of people, there's something for everyone? How do you guys decide that part of what you're doing?
I'm sure I'm going to say something that Zoe, who runs quality and regulatory for Athletic, is going to frown at me for. In general, there is a lot that's looser about non-alcoholic beer. We can sample anywhere for the most part outside of like 6 states nationally. We can send it across any state borders. We can do 3-tier or not in a lot of places. We just made the judgment that 3-tier distributors are great at what they do. But there are a lot of things we do have to stay on the right side of the law of, and everything about labeling still applies. Everything about what we can put on the cans. There's a lot we can't do on the cans that alcohol brands can do on the cans. can't use a lot of very basic words, can't put the nutrition facts on it. So it is state by state in some places, but I do think we have opted in further to the TTB than we have to. Like, we got a brewer's notice and stuff, so I do believe our tap rooms technically could if we got the local licenses. Yep.
Sam, I want to hear from you because I know Dogfish Head forayed in non-alc for a little bit. What did you learn from trying to get into that category?
Yeah, so as we were doing our merger of Dogfish and BBC, we had this sweet little skid system to do de-alkalizing and low gravity fermentation, play with the ratios of both to come up with great recipes. And Jim Cook, myself, and a few others said, all right, well, let's kind of play with this very new, fast-growing category with both brands. Let's really lean especially hard at off-centered for Dogfish to get those learnings. So ours was Lemon Quest, and it was intentionally way out, like kind of a Radler meets a Gatorade, and talking about the sea salts, etc., walking that TTB line that we know we walk, and then let's use our Sam brand to go hard at the German styles that the Sam brand's known at. And in that era, as we were bringing both forward, a learning was, wow, as young craft drinkers are getting into this space that weren't the drinkers of, I won't say what, old school, industrial light lager, non-alc brands, they were like, I'll take the leap to non-alc, but I want a recognizable style. And so as we saw that coming out of the gates, we're like, all right, we only have so many resources, so many bets to make with our distributors. We're growing the shit out of Dogfish canned cocktails. Let's go that lane and alc beers for Dogfish, but let's let the Sam Adams brand blossom with non-alc. And so, we got the gold medal at the last GABF for just the haze, and we just launched our gold. I think I see my pal Garrett. Are you back there, Garrett? So Garrett does a beautiful non-alc ale with Brooklyn. So as Bill said, it's super cool that our rising tide's floating all ships. And right now, of the 15 top, IRI-defined non-alcs, only 2 are in BA-defined craft, which is us, and it's so cool to see giant billboards in Brooklyn all about non-alc and what you guys are doing, because it's a category our company believes in, and we'll keep making bets in.
I actually just had a Sam non-alcoholic IPA with my lunch today, and that is the dream, to be able to go open up a menu anywhere and be able to get a great version of what you may have drank alcoholic, non-alcoholic, and be able to rotate through those choices. I should have also said about the breweries, I think there's over 500 breweries nationally that do serve athletic beers, so it is super easy to get it at the local breweries, and that way, if a brewery's committed to other styles, other ABVs, stuff like that, they don't have to invest in the technology, the quality, everything that is specific about that. You can get another brewery's beer and serve it over the counter. So that's been a nice learning also.
Now let's switch to the other end of the spectrum and talk about those high ABV beers. And Sam, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, where there's this trend of there being a bit of a price and value play. How much are the two of you seeing consumers doing the beer math and calculating maybe this higher ABV, larger package is a better play for me?
Yeah, I mean, hello? I think some people are doing it. I mean, it's not the only reason that people are drinking imperial beers, but there's a subset of people that are drinking imperial beers that are drinking for the value or the booze for the buck. How many of them are doing the detailed math, I think is probably a pretty small number, but when you think about the ABV levels of, 8, 9, 10% beers, that can be, 70% to 100% above the ABV of kind of an average 5.5% beer. And so the prices aren't double. And so I think that in broad strokes is kind of the level of math that somebody's doing on it. But I think it's still just one subset of the, consumer and the behavior that's driving imperial beer growth.
I totally agree, and I think we got to be really careful with that at this moment, because we all know scale-wise, average American lives within 9 miles of one of the 10,000 local breweries, and yet 3 or 4, big companies still have over 75% of our country's beer market, and they can make stuff in volume really well. So if it just becomes about the ABV per dollar equation, that's going to be a challenging steel reserve-y world for us to navigate. So talking about our brands, the quality, the ingredients, the integrity, has to stay part of the equation, even though in three-tier distribution, particularly where higher ABV, IRI-defined craft is growing, C-stores, grocery, 19.2s, we got to keep talking about our brands and what makes them distinct versus just the ABV per dollar ratio. Jenny and I both have faux tats on our arms. Show yours proudly, Jenny. We just did an event in Delaware, Dogfish yesterday, called Weekend of Compelling Ales and Spirits, where we paired all these different beers and cocktails across all of our properties. And the first thing to be totally sold out was Liqueur de Malt, which is French for malt liquor. And we did a beautiful heirloom corn, lime juice, and tahine infused malt liquor, and it came with a hand stamped post-recycled brown bag that we would put it in for you. But you're gonna pay $13 for this 40-ounce thing, and we talked about everything that went into it. So yes, alcohol per dollar is more of a conversation that's ever been, and that's scary, and that's up to us as makers to talk about the quality as that we have to navigate that right now.
Bill, how are you navigating that on the non-alc side? Because there's some debate that, if there's no alcohol in it, then I should be paying less for it. But you guys just got on JetBlue, and the prices are pretty in line with the alcoholic beer.
Yeah, the spreadsheet in that formula doesn't work if you divide by 0, so we really have to mark it for sure. But it really is that. It's the experience, and how does your beer make people feel when it's in their hand and when they tell their friends what they're drinking, or is it the most interesting thing they drank that week or on a trip somewhere? What experience did you offer them? And it could be the flavor, it could be the environment in your tap room, it could be something about your marketing that lets them escape from their daily day-to-day. But it has to deliver every element of that. For Athletic to offer a different price than a mass market non-alcoholic lager, we do have to have a higher quality, more consistent beer, better ingredients, better flavors, and a story and marketing that people are really proud of. So, when you look at the can and you're like, what's 2 for the trails? Everything as they peel back the onion of Athletic Brewing, they've got to love and want to tell their friends about. And it's not that first case of your beer they drink, it's the 500th case and that they fall in love with. So that's what we're always, but it definitely is, we get price a lot, and it is, alcohol is a very functional ingredient, so it's definitely an added marketing hurdle for sure.
What are the top 3 in your own data? Top 3, when you say alcohol is a very functional ingredient, what are the top 3 definitions of functional?
Yeah. There are a lot of them. I mean, you see a lot of them going by out there. Yeah.
I'm just going to leave and I was just going to leave and let Sam conduct this now. He's going to put everybody. No, you're going to put the pressure questions on everybody. It's great. We have an audience question, actually, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's for you, Bill, talking about that quality standard. And they mentioned that a few years ago at CBC, there was talk of how a few breweries screwing up non-alcoholic beer could actually be a detriment to craft. Is there any concern for that happening as the segment has become even larger than it was?
Oh, absolutely. So we've heard the leaders of craft beer talk about for years how important it is for every craft beer experience of consumers to be excellent, that they want to tell their friends about. And that's what helps keep craft growing, is word of mouth and pride in the segment. For non-alcoholic beer in particular, we don't have ethanol as a preservative in the products, and there's an extremely tough set of standards that come with that to protect our consumers from pathogens, bacteria, re-fermentation, and the risks are enormous. And at Athletic, we've invested in food safety and quality probably more than any other vertical, and the equipment that goes along with that. Zoe and Russ on our team will be making a presentation on Wednesday, diving into that topic, which they're much more advanced than I am. And we're trying to be leaders out in front. We're happy to talk to anyone about those food safety challenges. The risks are very real because sensitive populations are drinking non-alcoholic beer also. So it's not only, if a 7% ABV beer is off by 0.5%, it's not the end of the world. But if a 0.5% ABV beer is off by 2 or 3%, which it could be, that is a real PR problem for the category and a whole nother set of educational challenges for a category that already has some really hard educational challenges.
We have about 10 minutes left here. I want to know from Bill and from Colleen, you both are dealing with kind of one core ABV style, but for Sam, you're dealing with them across the spectrum. Have you found a right balance in what that range should be and how many of different offerings you should have out there for people?
I'd say, we go into, we're very lucky that we have a number of tasting room small breweries. So we have a 1 barrel, a 5 barrel, a 7 barrel, a 100 barrel, and a 200 barrel brew house. And so Jenny, every couple weeks is running our beverage calendar meeting. And we go into that knowing, again, we have to make big, deep bets for distribution plays. Frankly, now more than ever, not only the distributors asking for fewer, deeper plays, but since we were merged with BBC, we're a portfolio company. So when we make our bets, we're making them in concert with other 4 national brands. So we try never to put the pressure on our 1 barrel, 5 and 7 to come up with the next 90-minute or citrus squall. We let our brewers, our makers, our distillers, our cocktail experts throw shit at the wall, but then we really do work hard. Social media, we have 1.3 million followers, events like we did this weekend, listening to the things where they think there's excitement and white space, and then we kind of coddle those towards presenting to our distributors to go deeper with fewer bets. But that's a way of, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's describing kind of our process there.
For sure. All right, the last question I want to hear from each of you, we can start with Bill and run down the line, but I think it's fair to say that for most people here and watching online, their ABV style is more in that middle range. It's not in one of these two extremes like you all. But are there still any learnings that people can take away from these trends that they can apply to trying to market those middle range beers?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, I think there's real opportunity in every stage of the ABV spectrum, and it's all about how you focus. You act consistently, make consistently great products and market those products. So I think there's opportunity all over the ABV spectrum. And as Sam said, whatever direct customer data points you have, take full advantage of those. And for everything positive, lean into that. Ask them why, how it makes them feel. Oh, what part of that did you love? Great. And then amplify that and get more people like that. On the other end of the spectrum, as a rule of thumb, you only hear from 1 out of 9 people who has a bad experience with your products, but that average person tells 11 people about it. So for any bad experience, there's also 100 reverberations of that out in the world. So you definitely have to listen to both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think building off of that, I would say, for me, it's about focus and clarity of your brand identity. And then staying really disciplined and true to that. I think it's tempting to see trends and think, oh, we've got to chase what's going on. And I think it's really important, regardless of kind of the ABV focus that you have, to ask yourself, does this trend fit for us, or how would we do it in a way that is authentic to our brand? I look at numbers all the time, and I see headlines all the time of non-alcoholic beers growing. I'm not about to jump into that because that's not who we are and what we're all about. And I think the same is true for any brewery, not just a purely non-alc brewery or a purely imperial brewery, is you really have to know who you are and stay disciplined at staying who you are, because otherwise you'll end up diluting yourself more, before the market will dilute you.
Well said. I would say I asked our coworker Todd Bowling before we went into this to just look at those 4 categories, sub 0.5 ABV, 0.5 to 5. Our company defines mid-range at like 5 to 8, and then 8 and over. And if you look at the whole beer category, IRI defined beer, it's still 75%, 5 to 8 ABV. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but we know there's trends, moments that are going to be long-lived and become facts of what we are doing in those other categories. But we also know as BA defined craft, we got to keep bringing the excitement for that wheelhouse of mid ABV beers, which is exciting for sure across all those spectrum of ABV levels.
Well, I think that is a perfect spot for us to end. Thank you guys. Give a round of applause for our panelists, everybody.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us live here in Nashville and virtually during this Brew Talks meetup in Nashville during the Craft Brewers Conference. My name is Justin Kendall, and I'm the editor of Brewbound. And Brew Talks wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsors. So let's introduce one of them right now, one of our presenting sponsors, Ollie by NextGlass. Ollie is a software built to manage inventory, customer relationships, and order and payment processing all in one place. Joining me now is Dustin Jeffers, a solutions consultant for NextGlass. Thanks for being here, Dustin.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dustin, for those unfamiliar with Ollie, give us a rundown of what it does.
Sure. Ollie is an ERP system that can handle everything from your raw materials to make the beer to invoicing your finished goods to your customers. So Ollie is broken out into Ollie Ops and Ollie Order. So we can provide the best and most appropriate solutions for any size and style brewery.
So tell us some of those differences between Ollie Ops and Ollie Order.
Yeah, so Ollie Ops handles everything from your raw material procurement to when you actually package your finished goods. And then it can go over to Ollie Order. It takes your finished goods and allows you to allocate those to products in the warehouse, gives you the ability to invoice customers, create BOLs. If you're a self-distributing brewery, be able to create pick lists for your warehouse team, and then also has a built-in CRM system for your sales team to use.
And you don't need to do both, right? That's my understanding.
Yeah, you don't have to do both. It's great for any size brewery. So if you just need the operations side, we can handle that. If you are self-distroing, deal with a lot of distributors, or have a large sales team, then you can really utilize a lot of the stuff in Ollie Order. And the nice part is both systems also integrate with QuickBooks online. So we can also handle your accounting, whether you're just in ops, in order, or in both.
And let's get into some of the differences between Ollie and its competitors. Can you break down sort of how Ollie differentiates itself?
Yeah, I feel like one of the first big differences is the parent company that you mentioned is NextGlass. So with NextGlass being the parent company to Ollie, we have a ton of experience in the brewing industry with the other solutions we have. So that includes stuff like Untapped, Beer Advocate, Hop Culture, and Osner. So besides having the experience from all those teams with those solutions, we also have a lot of industry veterans now that work closely with the Ollie product. So these individuals worked in different parts of the brewery, whether it be actual brewers, heads of operations, sales, and even some founders. So this experience allows us to have great insights when designing new features in Ollie. We know firsthand how hard it can be to keep up with accurate and up-to-date information with your brewery, whether you're on spreadsheets or some of the other solutions out there. So we strive to make Ollie easy for brewers to input their info in the system. And that way, in my past experience, I've always worked with a lot of other systems on the operations side. At times, I felt like a glorified data inputter instead of being able to actually go in and analyze all that data that my team was putting into the system. So I feel like we really can handle that, make it easier to use on the brewer side. So that way, director of ops and owners can really analyze the information instead of just inputting them, so they can make the best decisions possible.
Yeah, you've had some experience with it brewing, and so running a brewery. So how critical is it to get that real-time COGS, the revenue, all of that all in one place?
Yeah, it's very hard, especially on spreadsheets. It's hard to keep up-to-date info. It's also difficult to look at your past information. And then in some other systems, a lot of times my brewers would be writing stuff on brew sheets and then hand it to me at the end of the day. And then I would be in a mad scramble to input everything all the time. So that's why one of our goals is to really make it easy for the brewers to use, input that data. And then that way you can have accurate looks on your current COGS, whether that be the actual raw materials coming in or your finished goods COGS. I think it's harder and harder, especially for smaller breweries that may not think they need this to compete in the distribution that's going on today. So it may seem like a great idea to start distribution, get more beer out there, produce more beer. But if you don't have a true accurate look on what your current up-to-date COGS are for your finished goods, it can be really scary going out into distribution. Besides just other beers, you are also competing against RTDs, craft seltzers, non-alcoholic beer. So it may seem great, go to distro, but the last thing you want to do can be really detrimental to go into distribution with a loss leader. You may see your COGS for your finished goods on one batch, and you know what your profit is. But it's really important to see how that cost of goods changes over time between batch to batch, see if you're trending up, trending down, or if all your costs are staying the same. So I really think Ollie can help breweries do that and see some of those trends and variants.
Are there misconceptions or preconceived notions that folks might have with software like this?
Yeah, we talk to a lot of brewers and owners that think that they're too small for a system. That's one of the nice parts about Ollie, since it is broken out into two systems. You can have just Ollie Ops, handle some of those initial batches, see what your finished cost of goods are. And then as you grow, as you distribute more, build a sales team, then you can bring in Ollie Order. When we talk to breweries and breweries that I've been a part of, the most efficient ones have a system in place before they actually need it. I've been a part of breweries that have had rapid growth, and during that time, the last thing you want to do is implement a system. You want that already in place because with that rapid growth, you're going to run into issues with quality, and you want to make sure that your first product out to the market in mass is up to your quality standards. So we want you to focus on the beer and not on your ERP system.
What are some of the biggest needs that you're hearing from your clients now?
I feel like some of the biggest needs is stuff that we've already kind of mentioned, knowing what their true costs are, knowing what their inventory is. Cash flow is always an issue with breweries. So they want to make sure they have enough product on hand, whether it be on the finished goods side or the raw material side, and not keeping a lot of inventory. So we can help a lot with that. With raw material forecast tools, a lot of different reports you can run on your sales side, see where your beer is going. And then also, it's getting to be a more tech-driven world. So the nice part with us, again, with Next Glass being the parent company, is we have a lot of other solutions for breweries that they can use and start tying everything together.
Are there other common threads that you're seeing across your client base?
Yeah, more and more breweries have had to start adding other products on, whether it be seltzers, meads, ciders, and us being able to keep cost of goods for raw materials across all of those different products has definitely been something that's been requested. Also, kind of what you are talking about today on Brew Talks, the multi-tap room, multi-production facilities. Again, distribution is getting harder and harder. So breweries are starting to become more inventive on ways to get their products to customers. So we're definitely striving every day, talking to breweries plus our industry knowledge on ways to help them, especially with all of this multi-location issues.
Having that brewing experience, what are some of the keys to creating a brewer-friendly software program?
Yeah, so it's really nice that Darren, who was the head product engineer on Ollie Ops, he was a brewer at BJ's for a little more than 10 years. So we're truly built for brewers by brewers. Plus, you have people like myself on board and a couple others as well that actually worked in a brewery. So when we go in and decide on what next we want to build on our platforms, we have a lot of industry knowledge. We all run fake breweries on the system. So we do our day-to-day actions, give feedback to the development team. And then also before it gets released to our customers, we go in and try to break it. So it's one of my fun parts of my day, going in, trying to break the system, play with new tools, and giving feedback on how this would have helped me.
It's like a video game. You're going to be a virtual brewer.
Yeah, and I get paid for it. It's great.
That's not a bad thing either. So, final question for you, and you sort of alluded to this earlier. How much integration do you see there being across the Next Glass family in the future?
Yeah, we have a lot of those other solutions for breweries just besides the ERP system. So Untapped for Business can handle your physical and digital menus. Osner can handle memberships and online sales. Plus, we have Untapped Data and Insights that can give breweries some visibility into when the customer is actually drinking the beer instead of just when accounts are buying it or when customers are buying it from grocery stores. So starting to pull in all of this other information we have, other tech solutions, our goal is to start bringing them all together now that we have all of these different solutions under our umbrella and really provide a one-stop shop for breweries.
Dustin, thanks for doing this, and thanks for supporting the Brew Talks. Where can folks find out more about Ollie?
Yeah, easiest way is to go to getollie.com and you can sign up and you can get us on a demo and we can show you the system and how we can help you.
Well, check it out and stay tuned for more from Brew Talks.
Welcome back to Brew Talks live in Nashville. I'm Justin Kindle, the editor of Brewbound. Thanks for everybody for coming out today. You all having a good time? Please give it up for Zoe and our first panels. They did an excellent job. Also, please give it up for the Brewbound team behind the scenes, Josh, Landis, Sarah, Bryce. Everyone that's killing it, allowing us to be up here and to do our thing. So thanks to them. So glad you're all here. Glad we're doing this. We're excited. A big thank you to our presenting sponsors, Dogfish Head and Ollie, a Next Glass company, as well as our additional sponsors, Arrived, Distribution, the E-Premise Group, Encompass, Malt Europe, Pneumatic Scale Angeles, Reyes Beverage Group, and Strike Visuals. Please give it up for them. So we are all very aware that the craft brewing industry could be a lot more representative than it is. Less than 1% of craft breweries in the U.S. are owned by African Americans. However, there is an organization giving voice to Black and brown brewers. The National Black Brewers Association is a membership-based nonprofit organization on a mission to increase representation in the craft brewing industry. And we have some of the leaders here today to discuss. So joining me on stage is Celeste Betty, founder of Harlem Brewing Company in New York City. How you doing, Celeste?
I'm doing great. Good beer.
Hold your mic up so
I'm doing great, sorry. Beer helps.
She's great. So We also have Chris Harris, founder of Black Frog Brewery in Holland, Ohio. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Thank you for having us.
And we're going to break a little news here because our third panelist is Kevin Asado, the new executive director of the National Black Brewers Association. So, welcome, Kevin.
Hello, everyone. Extremely happy to be here and appreciate the introduction there.
Yeah, we got some great energy in this room. So, Kevin, let's start with the NB2A's mission and vision. Please give us an overview of that. What are your goals?
Well, they're definitely not my goals. They're definitely the goals of the organization, right? This organization is compounded of the brewers that are in this community today. And from that, we absolutely want to be the most trusted and respected and impactful organization for Black brewers of America. You know, we're going to highlight the history and the understanding of Black brewers. And from that history, our mission is going to be driven towards, quite frankly, addressing the fact that only 1% of ownership is in the Black and African American communities there. So we're going to look to right that and increase that and be a bit more representative of the demographics of the U.S. I mean, that's our initial goal, but we're not setting a timeline against that just yet there.
So what are some of the main issues that are facing Black brewers today? And I'll throw this to the whole panel. Feel free to chime in, Celeste and Chris.
I don't think there's a main, but there's definitely a few that come to mind as hitting a little harder. Look, getting into ownership, there's a lot of heavy moving parts, right? And there's a lot of tools required. It's, heavy capital resources required, good, phenomenal understanding of the brewery process, and quite frankly, the sales and distribution components all become major components, but they're heavy, right? There's a lot that gets involved in ownership. Not everyone wants to be an owner. Not everyone wants to take on all those responsibilities. And so when you look at the Black Brewers Association, we can perhaps connect some of the people that may only have a passion in select disciplines and bring a group of those people together to help take on some of the bigger initiatives there. But on top of that, we talked about some of the resources being available. There are some challenges on getting some of those resources. And so that's going to be one of our bigger opportunities to really tackle and knock down.
So feel free to chime in, Celeste, if you have something. Well, next question's coming to you anyway. African Americans make up 13% of the U.S. population. We know that there's less than 1% that's brewery ownership. How do we get there as far as making this a more representative community? And what are the hurdles to making that progress?
Well, Kevin definitely touched on it. We know the big one is capital. Certainly know that. I think the other one that I've experienced personally, and when I've talked to other Black and brown brewers, is making sure that the bankers and the funders actually understand that we are able to have a passion for beer. Helping them understand that, we can be brewers. On some of the questions I've gotten recently about a project we're working on in Rocky Mountain, it's like, why do you want to brew there? It's like odd questions about them seeing us as brewers. Obviously that has its own challenge because there are just not many people that look like us. But some of the responses, I think they've really got to come into the community and see that we can brew, we can create places and spaces for people to gather and experience beer. And I think that's been a really big hurdle because of the imagery that they've seen, which is good. But we've got to get them to see us as brewers. We've also got to get more people in our community through a lot of the initiatives that we're talking about to see themselves as brewers, to see that they can do this, they can brew. But I think those two things have to come together. The lending institutions, the funders have to come in and see who we are, where we are, meet us where we are, and take a chance. Give us an opportunity to really be a part of this industry.
Chris, I'd love to hear from you too. What are some of the issues that you're seeing out there that would really help Black brewers?
Going along with what Celeste said, in some of my personal experiences, you get people that will come into the tap room and they're surprised to see, a Black owner behind the bar serving them beer. And then when they taste the beer and they're like, wow, that's really great. And you kind of get the feeling that, okay, what do they really expect from, a black brewer, or what do they think is it going to be a malt liquor? But as Celeste said, I mean, we have a wide array of different beers that we brew that can appeal to many different types of audience, and they just need to give us a chance.
Chris, I'm going to stick with you for a second here. How could we build some more awareness for the black brewers who are out there, as well as the history?
There needs to be more outreach to minority communities for a better understanding of the craft beer community. If you look at some of the major players in the beer industry, they really don't target minority communities with craft beer. So that could be a step to where you could start, targeting your product in minority communities, and because minorities make up a big demographic of consumership that's going to purchase beer. So that may be another revenue stream that people may not even be considering, that if I target this minority community, then I might increase my revenue share whatever beer company they have.
Let's bring you back in, Kevin. What are some of the initiatives that the NB2A is doing to sort of drive that awareness, or will be doing, I should say?
One of the first things, there's already existing trade organizations, right? We're a part of a larger community. So some of the challenges that you yourselves are experiencing, we experience precisely the same. So we're keen to meet with the leadership of all the large, other trade organizations there, and make sure that we essentially pick up where they leave off, right? We know they're doing a lot of good work. We're not looking to do duplicative work. We don't want to, but we can absolutely add on and build and augment to what they're doing there. So that would be one of the first things, meeting with that leadership group there. And we'll constantly be evolving what the priorities are and what our initiatives will be, right? I mean, as time passes, we recognize that our board is living, breathing some of the challenges firsthand. So we're constantly going to be updating what we're going to be working on and what resources and individuals we pull together to help knock down those obstacles.
Celeste, you started Harlem Brewing in 2000, and you have a wealth of experience in this industry, and you can provide a lot of mentorship to the up-and-coming black and brown brewers out there. How do you see the NB2A playing a role there in mentorship for the up-and-coming brewers?
I think the wonderful thing about the formation of the National Black Brewers Association is that you've had quite a number of people very, very excited about bringing our cause and the opportunities that exist in our communities to the forefront. But now we have a central place, an organization where all of that energy can be channeled together. We can bring all of that into one space and actually work together on some of these issues. And I think there's been several organizations that have come together to really look at some of the issues that we're facing. And this organization represents a broad spectrum of black and brown brewers across the country. You get to talk to some of the people here today. I mean, New York, West Coast, East Coast, all over. A lot of the brewers that you know are part of this organization. So I think it's really an opportunity now for us to bring all of that energy together and look at some of the issues together, and to let other people see that there is an organization that represents all of our interests. And any of you in this room that wants to be a part of this, you can come to that organization. And that will help us really move things forward in a way where we can begin to see some change and begin to engage people that are supportive of black and brown brewers. So having that organization is really important. You know where to go. You go to the website. You can talk to any of us to find out what some of those needs are. So I think this is pretty revolutionary at this time to form this organization, to be able to really focus in on our collective concerns as black and brown brewers.
That's right. Chris, you started Black Frog in 2014. What would it have meant to have mentors out there to lean on at that time, or an organization that could sort of pull everything together in one place, be a clearinghouse, really?
It would have been amazing. when I started organizing and trying to figure what I wanted to do with the brewery beforehand, and did a lot of researches. Of course, you ran across legends like Celeste and Garrett, but there really wasn't any type of a resource on, okay, you need to do this step, you need to do this step, you need to do this step. But what this organization will do is we're going to get all that information together, so when somebody is thinking about it or in the process of opening a brewery, they can come to, it's a one-stop shop to where, okay, there's going to be some type of mentorship to get them from point A to point B without any of the problems that any of us, occurred in our earlier days. And it's just going to make an easier path for that newer generation of brewers that's coming up.
Kevin, we talked a little bit earlier, and you said, you're just starting your membership drive, really, and you're starting from square one. There are a lot of folks, I'm sure, who are in this room who would be supportive. I'm sure there are a lot of folks who are watching at home and who will see this on replay who want to be supportive. How can they be supportive? What can they do to back the NB2A?
Justin, that's a phenomenal question, and the short answer is become a member. That's the first step that we're going to be asking everybody to do. And when we have our membership drive, that's going to take place in a couple of months there. But that will give you some good insight of not only what we're able to do, but where you can actually lend a helping hand as well. Whether it's your experience, your financial, physical resources, your time, all of those resources are absolutely necessary. When you hear like the stories of Chris saying, hey, if you're giving us your experience, your ability to be a mentor, we can actually help a fledgling brewer not make the same mistakes and actually accelerate to success much faster, right? That's a win. That's a massive opportunity for us to be successful. And that comes from this community out here and the community out there that's viewing and whatnot. We benefit from all resources that come through. So becoming a member and providing any sort of resources you have to offer to support our process would be greatly appreciated.
So where can they find out more information? Where should they go? How can they contact you? What should they do?
nb2a.org. That is our website. That is going to be where we're going to house all of our information. We will have social media presence in Instagram and Facebook, so we will have touch points there. As Justin mentioned, we are very much in the start, and as we have our board meeting, we're going to continue to produce content and additional information, so we're still developing all the tools that will be visible and accessible, but as of today, nb2a.org is the website that you can keep up with the latest and greatest that we have going on.
Well, give it up for Kevin, Celeste, and Chris. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for sharing your vision. We're excited.
Thank you very much, Justin.
Thank you for having us.
Very much.
So let's get rolling here. Many breweries are looking outside of their home state's borders for taproom expansion opportunities. More than 90% of craft breweries rely on at-the-brewery sales, according to Brewers Association Chief Economist Bart Watson. In addition to providing an avenue for higher margin sales, taprooms allow breweries to interact directly with drinkers, curate a branded experience, and tap into real-time consumer feedback. For breweries who open taprooms in new markets, those ventures can establish deeper roots in new communities. Our panelists today will share their strategies and tips for opening out-of-state taprooms. So let's welcome their panelists, starting here with Jeff Heck, the co-founder of Monday Night Brewing in Atlanta, which outside of Georgia operates taprooms in Nashville, Charlotte, and Birmingham. Thanks for being here, Jeff.
My pleasure.
On the end, we have Adam Charnick, co-owner of Highwire Brewing in Nashville, which outside of North Carolina operates tap rooms in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Alabama, and soon to be Ohio. Although I think I got that right.
Come on, Justin, keep up with things. Ohio's open.
You only have 11 tap rooms, so it's a little hard to keep track here. Finally, last but not least, we have Marcus Baskerville here in the middle, co-owner of Weathered Souls Brewing in San Antonio, which also operates a brewery in Charlotte. So thanks for being here, Marcus.
Thank you for having me.
So we have a text line too. That number is 617-336-8560. That's 617-336-8560. If you have questions for them, send them. I'll try and get you some answers. But let's start with the obvious question, and that is why. Why is expanding to an out-of-state market with a brick and mortar space the right opportunity? And I'll start with you, Jeff.
Well, I think the answer is it's not necessarily the right thing for anybody. And you were talking about some of the reasons to do it. And I think we start with the reasons of what are the wrong reasons to do it? Because a brick and mortar location is not a silver bullet, nor is it easy. It's actually a very different business than a distribution business. So we distribute in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. That's 70 to 80% of our volume. But for us, what those brick and mortar locations do are really two things. One, they help to further our purpose, which is not just about putting beer on the shelf, but to really deepening relationships in the markets that we serve. And two, they help to build brand awareness and connectivity to the brand in markets that we haven't had a physical presence in before. So we've seen that wholesale sales typically get a pretty significant double-digit boost when we open a tap room in a market that we already sell and distribute into.
Marcus, you went from 1 to 2 breweries. Why was that the right decision for your business?
Yeah, I won't say it's necessarily the right decision, but being that we're in San Antonio is a market that is very overly saturated with Hispanic drinkers and is very much the Modelo Dos Equis capital of the world. So being said that, we had an opportunity to expand our outreach outside of the San Antonio, Texas market. Yeah, so dealing with that, it was kind of the situation that made it right for us within the Charlotte market, as they're a very welcoming, emerging craft beer scene. And so for us, it was more so about the outreach of getting out of San Antonio and be able to hit multiple markets.
So Adam, you like courting complexity. So why is 11 tap rooms the right business model at this moment? And I'm sure you'll add more down the road for Highwire.
No, I have a big announcement that we are not opening any more tap rooms after Nashville opens in a couple months.
Yet.
We just saw what Jeff was doing on Monday night and just figured we'd just copy whatever he was doing, basically. So just, core cities in the South. And for us, we looked at how do we differentiate ourselves. We started our brewery in 2012, 2013. It's wild to think that at 2,500 breweries at the time, it was an extremely crowded marketplace. Now it's quadruple that. But we saw success in our tap rooms. We saw challenges in the distribution model. We saw them not getting easier, but getting more challenging for a brewery that wasn't quite a legacy brewery and didn't quite have sort of that slam dunk #1 winning beer our portfolio sells across several different products. That was the impetus for opening up tap rooms outside of Asheville. But the other part of it is we are in a pretty small metropolitan area. Asheville is 250,000 people in the metro area. So it's nice to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. But I think ultimately if we wanted to expand our scope, the way to do that is to kind of branch out some tentacles and tentacles. And so we started off expanding into Durham and then into Wilmington and kind of saw success. It was sort of a proof of concept and so expanded out of state. So, I think that was a big part of it is that ultimately being in such a small market, if we wanted to reach our ambitions and reach the scope that we were looking for, we needed to kind of find another way to achieve some scale. So we found some markets where we had some brand loyalty and just kind of put our money where our mouth was, basically.
Marcus, let's go through some of the complexity of going from one operation to two. What was that like? Basically, you're doubling your complexity right off the bat there.
I'm still figuring it out. So we've been open since, the second location has been open since November. And so it's definitely been a work in progress because they're two very different markets. And so with our San Antonio location, it's very much taproom driven, outside sales, but then you look at the Charlotte location and they have so many different options when it comes to craft beer versus San Antonio. So you have to have things that are going to highlight your brand outside of just having beer, right? Because there's multiple amazing breweries there. So for us, it's been about trying to highlight some of the fantastic beers that we bring from the San Antonio location. We've also expanded into cocktails. So bringing in a top mixologist in the country really to curate our menu and create some fun cocktails, but then also on the restaurant side, trying to build a synergy. And so we've brought on a 4 times James Beard nominee to run our run the kitchen as far as the chef stuff. So trying to create the upper echelons of synergy between food, beverage, and beer, and working that and angle and trying to create something different from what we've had in our normal San Antonio market.
Jeff, when you go from taproom 2 to taproom 3 to taproom 4 and so on, what do you learn? What have you learned? Have you gotten it down yet? Or what's the challenge there?
There's just there's a lot of challenges. I mean, one of the things we've learned is there are dozens of ways to go wrong. And so I think we've learned so many things. I should write a book like Sam and Garrett here about that, about all the mistakes we've made. But look, I think the reality is that the real key for us has been to try to make sure that the locations we open are, one, commensurate with the quality and the hospitality experience that we want. We want to have our brand well represented. One of the things we talk about a lot is that each taproom needs to have a reason to exist. And it needs to have a reason to exist, just like any of our beers needs a reason to exist. It needs to be a place that, what's the reason this needs to exist, not just for us, but for the community that it's a part of? Is it consistent with the quality that we come to expect from our beers? So that's been a huge learning. And then the other thing I'd say is that the biggest learning has been people are everything. People are everything. Our general managers, especially in outlying markets that we aren't in every day, are the standard bearers of our brand and our experience and our culture. So we started brewing beer in my backyard on Monday nights, 15 years ago. And people would literally, for 4 years, 2,000 people came through my house when we were homebrewing. And what happened when they came through my house is that they're my guests. So I care so much that every person that walks into our tap room has the experience like they're walking into my house, that they're coming in, that they're welcome, that they feel comfortable and safe. So that means that I can't be in Charlotte or Birmingham or wherever. So we need to make sure that those GMs, we give them a ton of training. They live and breathe our culture, and that they're absolutely the right cultural fit. So that's probably the biggest learning I've had from all of it.
What do you think that folks underestimate when they're opening an out-of-state taproom, Adam?
There's more than meets the eye. Even if your brand sells well on the market, I think that's a good reason to consider opening a taproom in a market. But there's so much more to it. Marco you were talking about in Charlotte. Charlotte is I just went there for a few days. I go there often, but I went there to do an audit or a drop-in and kind of just evaluate how our tap room's competing in the market. I was just drunk walking in the streets thinking to myself, this is the New York City of beer market, of tap rooms. Charlotte is insane. It honestly is the most competitive craft beer market for tap rooms, I think, in the country that I'm aware of, at least. So you've got to step up your game. People, level up, I guess is a term. You really got to know what you're doing, and I think adapt. So I think, I forgot your original question, but the point on
what people underestimate when they open out of state.
Yeah, I think the best laid plans are a guidepost, and I think that's true not just in tap rooms, but in the craft beer business in generally. If you're not pivoting often. I think you're probably a step behind if you're not a step ahead, is the way I like to think about it. And so I think in tap rooms, it's plan and see how for us, it's been, how can our tap room be competitive and different and find a niche, but then also evaluate what we're doing. And if certain things are working, great. And if others aren't, well, then we need to kind of adapt and figure out how to maintain, what makes us special and why people want to come to us.
Marcus, I think you said that you opened in November. You've had some time now to sort of get settled, but what do you wish you had known now, or then what you know now about opening that new location?
I think the biggest thing is being aware of your local laws. Because I just mentioned in a manager's meeting not too long ago that Texas is definitely the Wild West. So there's a lot of things that we get away with or just generally don't have to worry about in the Texas market, especially when it comes to the restaurant side of things. But then going into the Charlotte location, it's like, wait, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And it's like, well, we did not know that. So I would say the biggest fault to us is the education portion of local laws, local processes, the different things that you're allowed to do on the restaurant end, the different things that you're allowed to do on the beverage end, because all of those are things that are going to help you progress in the long run, but they could definitely set you back if you're not familiar with what's going on in the area that you're opening in.
That's a great point. And I think, so we have tap rooms soon to be in 4 states. And I mean, we almost shop the states depending on what the laws are. I would love to open more brew pubs or tap rooms in Georgia, but in Georgia we there are very strict production laws that mean we got to spend at least an incremental $500,000 to comply with with those laws, which sucks. But then North Carolina is totally different, and so that's actually, I would really, before you do anything, understand how those state laws work. Hire a good attorney who understands the state laws. It's worth every penny that you'll spend. Every time.
I'm guessing that
No,
factors.
I'll second all that. I mean, I could just say ditto, and it'll pretty much, encompass what these guys said. But find local attorneys has been super helpful for us. The laws are so idiosyncratic in every state. We don't have a tap room in Georgia, and Jeff kind of highlighted one of the main reasons why. But it's really the legislation.
I talked it out of him because I didn't want him to come infringe on my backyard.
We can't copy your business model entirely, right?
Let's talk a little bit about market selection. When you're looking to expand to another location, what are the top factors in choosing not only a city but a space? And I'll start with you.
Sure. I mean, we look at where our brewery has relevancy and if and where we can stand out. There are a lot of cities in America that have extremely competitive craft beer environments, and it's very difficult. Even if we're popular there and sell a lot of beer there, it can be extremely difficult to stand out. And we've chosen to enter some of those markets, but it's also better sometimes to be. Some of our smaller markets that we're in that are have a less developed craft brewery scene, we actually see better performance than in larger markets that have more competitive craft brewery scene. If you caught what I just said there, I kind of confused myself, but so I think understanding the market dynamics is number one, and then two, I think part and parcel of our brand is we like being in locations that are. It's kind of a core belief of our company and our ownership is wanting to be in town. So it's very essential for us. And it may not be for other people's breweries, and that's okay. You have to understand what your niche is. So our niche is we like being in up and coming areas, like being in kind of closer to the heart of town. We like helping to improve neighborhoods and repurpose buildings where we can. We're being in kind of vibrant districts, and so that's dictated. The second part of your question is kind of how we decide what location to go into is a big part of it is just kind of who we are and what we want to be part of. So.
Jeff, I'd throw the same question to you, but why don't you hit that real quick? City and space. How do you determine it?
We want to be in markets that are adjacent to. We think about. So my background, I spent a lot of years investing in like multi-unit consumer retail businesses. So it's the whole idea is you got to expand concentric circles. No offense, Marcus. You got good reasons to be in Charlotte. But for us, that's been a part of our strategy. Is just where do people know our brand? what are the cities and geographies that we know and understand, which actually was part of what drove you guys to do Charlotte. And then how do we find spaces that are, to be similar to Adam, we want to be in sort of in-town, densely populated areas. We've made some mistakes on some of those as well. We've made some mistakes on some of those choices as well, but that's really our goal. The other thing I'd say is like we want spaces that are super unique, that that aren't cookie cutters. Every single one of our spaces, we have spaces from 3,000 square foot to 15,000 square feet with different programs and structures and programming, and so again, everything needs to have a reason to exist. I'll maybe come back to that.
Charlotte kind of sells itself, Marcus, but what was it that was attractive about the space there? I'll let you say the city, but we kind of know that it's a mecca.
Yeah, so for us, we actually toyed with opening Charlotte for our original location 7 years ago. But I wasn't moving to Charlotte at the time, so that didn't happen. But now we've been able to kind of expand our outreach, and I don't have to move. I spend a few weeks there every month, but I don't have to move. So being said that, for us, it was, again, something that was completely different from the market that we're currently in. Obviously, we have a fantastic stronghold in the San Antonio craft beer market, but one of the things for us is, especially because my business partner spent about 25 years in Charlotte, was expanding past that. Plus, we have a relevancy as far as our beer for the Charlotte market, and there's certain issues within there that we've seen a gap in at the time, so it worked out for us to be able to open. But then also dealing with the specific location that we opened, Charlotte is a very expanding market currently. So it's interesting because both of us are actually opening about 1.5 miles away from each other.
And Adam's like 2 blocks away from us.
He's like 2 blocks away.
We will all open Charlotte locations within 12 months of each other. Yeah.
So, and we're, 12 months of each other, and we're all within like a 2-mile radius of each other. So it's looking within those markets that are growing, expanding. The demographic scenes are growing there and different things like that. And so it just made sense at the time.
Adam, how do you weigh the price paid for being in a more densely populated area versus one that's cheaper but a little less populated?
Before I answer that question, can I give a shout out to our socks? I feel like we've got a really good sock game.
We got a sock game going on.
I just got distracted for a moment by the socks. I'm like, man, this is we may not be the best looking bunch, but our socks are pretty good. I'll take that as a win. Maybe it's the Dogfish Head talking. I don't know, but.
We got to rival Bart Watson. Bart Watson has the best socks in the business, so I mean.
I met Bart, but not a sock, so I'll have to pay attention to that next time. How do we, our first location outside of Asheville was in Durham, which for us was a approachable size market. And then we moved to Knoxville, which is kind of also a more approachable size. And eventually we worked our way up to bigger markets like Charlotte, Nashville, Cincinnati, Louisville. So I think for us, it was proof of concept in what we felt as more attainable markets, and then finding the confidence to kind of spread ourselves out and not overextend ourselves. So, and it's interesting, so it's not always the bigger the market, the bigger the returns for us. And this isn't all about like the performance of each tap room. It's about building a brand and putting our money where our mouths are and being local where we kind of already feel local, and putting a brick and mortar in. But also it is, part of the puzzle is that as the cities get bigger, generally there's more opportunity there. So I guess long answer short is it was proof of concept in smaller to medium-sized metros, and then kind of find that confidence and build from there.
Jeff, you've sort of leaned on it, or you mentioned it a little earlier, but you sort of focus on more densely populated areas, right?
Yeah, that's been the more recent focus, and a big part of that there's a trade-off, right? You're going to pay higher rent and have higher build-out costs for more densely populated areas. Just prepare for it, which means you have to have more sales. This is like 101 stuff, but it's shocking how easy it is to forget. You got to have higher sales, and you got to manage your costs to be able to pay for it. And so we always start when we're thinking about a location with like, what's our pro forma look like? We're doing as much research as we can to figure out like what do we think is a reasonable like low side revenue. We manage to the downside on most of these things to make sure that we don't get upside down. I mean, that's where we start. So the other thing is that managing additional tap rooms is, especially out of state, takes a ton of work and focus and institutional energy and cultural energy. And so our approach has also been, we want to have locations that are actually going to be pretty meaningful contributors from a financial perspective in order to necessitate the kind of investment that we need to make as a leadership team, resourcing our folks. We want to be able to, so it just doesn't make sense, even if it's going to be a profitable, even if the ROI makes sense on paper, we want to be able to take bigger swings at fewer spots. So that's been a part of what's contributed to that strategy.
Marcus, you've just opened Charlotte, but is that the end for Weathered Souls, or do you sort of think, well, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe another market?
Yeah, no, that's not it. We're actually about to open another location or another tap room in Charlotte inside the Spectrum Center with the Hornets. Thank you. Yeah. And we're working on a couple other little potential locations. I can't say what yet. But hopefully the goal is to get like these two gentlemen next to me and open a few different locations over the next few years.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about real estate and landlords, because everybody loves talking about real estate and landlords. What considerations do you need to make when considering a lease? And I'll start with you, Jeff.
This is the boring stuff that's super important and will come back to bite you in the ass. I mean, I really do think that your landlord, your lease, how you structure it, unless you're a real estate attorney, hire a good real estate attorney to help you walk through this stuff. It's super, super important. And there's one thing I would just say too is that in our experience, one unique thing about being a craft brewery is that you bring something really special and unique to a landlord. A couple of our tap rooms are part of larger developments, and so that's given us some leverage when negotiating with our landlords about flexibility or the investments that they make. And so a lot of times we found that actually landlords will be pretty flexible and open to some creative ideas. Don't just bend over backwards. Don't just say no. Landlords oftentimes have a very rigid idea of how they think about, like, it's X dollars a foot, and we give you X dollars in build-out money, and you have a 10-year term. But the reality is we have several deals where we've structured things as percentage rents or partial percentage rents, or we can renew in 5 years at a market rent, or we can pay you back for the money that you've given us to help build out is in a different. So there's so many different creative ways to structure those leases that align, but it really starts actually with not just at knowing what do you want, but also knowing like what is the value you bring to this landlord. They're betting on your credit as a tenant. All they want to do is get paid, which makes sense because they're giving you a space that they could lease to someone else. So I really think understanding what your landlord's motivation is also helps as well.
I'll echo what Jeff said. I can't underestimate the value of having qualified professionals help you out. Or if you have that capacity yourself. As Jeff mentioned, your background, you said, was in consumer product goods or something like that. I mean, and that probably informs a lot of your capacity, natural capacity to do a lot of what you do. And similarly, I have a background in commercial real estate, and so I think that kind of informs my worldview. That's something that I think of. I think I can think of something a little bit differently than somebody who doesn't have that background and experience. Not better or worse, just differently. So I think, though, if your background doesn't happen to be in these areas, then work with good people. You mentioned real estate attorneys. I'll throw in a good real estate broker. Probably the most important thing. So, if what Jeff said overwhelms you of all the different opportunities and ways to negotiate a real estate transaction is overwhelming, like, it doesn't need to be your ideas. It needs to be your real estate broker's ideas. We work with top-notch real estate brokers that we can't speak highly enough, and they help not only find space, but then also be creative in negotiating solutions for you as well. So.
Marcus, what have you learned in negotiating that second lease? And now it sounds like third and fourth and so on.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what these gentlemen said. You definitely want to have a good lawyer in hand, and definitely a good broker. So luckily, I haven't had to deal with too much of that. But being able to work with your landlord in a cohesive type of situation where they're going to be able to help you out when you need assistance and stuff like that is going to be very important. So building up those type of relationships is definitely going to kind of guard you in the long run.
Let me say build on one other thing Jeff said too, breweries add a lot. We always talk about how we're building community. I think most brewers in the room can say that about their business is you're building community. You are, and you're bringing people to a community, and so you provide a pretty big asset for a landlord, and smart landlords will notice that and see that and value that appropriately. So just again, while they're the big bad boss who has the space that you want, you're also providing a great resource for them, and you have a lot that you're offering for them and their goals as well, and that's important to remember.
Let's talk a little bit about brand. Let's bring it home to that, because craft fans have been enamored with local, and these are markets that you're new to in a lot of ways. So when you're entering a new market, how do you build a brand reputation in those markets to consumers who have been largely local seeking? I'll start with you, Adam.
Yeah, sure. I'll just dive in. We spent a lot of time and energy. These are markets we already felt local enough in, so we just put our money where our mouth is and our word where our mouth is. We host a lot of nonprofit nights at our tap rooms to build the communities that we want to be building in. We also have a lot of programming. We have a calendar of events at all of our tap rooms, and it's probably full more than half the time. Whether it's a drag bingo or a silent disco or even like a puzzle night or a pop-up thing going on, or there's kind of always something going on that kind of is additive to what we're doing. And then the last part is just kind of having our tap rooms being true to who we are. We're a fun brand, meant to be a good time, or like good beer, good times is on our cans. That's what we're trying to spout. So when you come to our places, there's games, there's amazing hand-drawn murals. It's just, we're trying to kind of embody who we are, and I think that's what makes them unique.
Marcus, how do you bring that Weathered Souls experience to your new markets?
Yeah, well, obviously it's about branding, but then also getting to kind of know your local market and community. So for us, with our brewery, we have a lot of community outreach and a lot of community support. So even then, looking at the quality of styles that we're releasing with a particular branding, we're more known for stouts, and Charlotte hasn't been a big heavy stout market, and so that's been a niche for us that we've been able to go into. But dealing with us, it's more so kind of about also attaching yourself to the community, attaching yourself to the people around you, and we've been able to do a pretty good job of that.
Jeff, when you're bringing the Monday night experience to a market like Charlotte, where you've got competitors on down the line, how do you bring that unique experience?
Yeah, these guys right here. I think one thing that has changed, so we've been open for 12 years now. One thing that has really changed in the industry is that I think local means something different now. I think our consumers care a lot more about our engagement with, employment of, connection to our local communities than that it was founded by somebody that lives within a 5-mile radius. I just think that is a different ballgame. So I think I'd echo what these guys said, like knowing your local market. One just additive thing I'd say is training. Training is huge. So we really want to hire local GMs, local assistant managers, local staff, people that know the neighborhood, that know that when their neighbors come in, they know them and can connect with them. But then we also want to really immerse them in the Monday night culture. So our GM for Nashville, or for Charlotte, which is opening in about 6 weeks hopefully, has spent 3 or 4 weeks in Atlanta, then in Nashville with our GM in Nashville, in Birmingham and then back in Atlanta, and then back to Charlotte, and then every week we've got somebody going up. So that is so critical to make sure that they are connected deeply to their community, but also that we're giving them the training to understand what does it mean to be Monday Night Brewing in this local community.
How soon do you make that hire?
So we hire a GM, we are usually hiring them like 3 months out, which is a lot of time. So they have about a month of training that's really, we're not expecting anything from them. Sometimes it's even more than 3 months, but we don't expect anything other than them just to be a sponge, which is expensive for a good GM. And travel and all that stuff. And then they're really developing a plan, hiring and onboarding. I think it's super important that a GM be allowed to hire their own team, but only after they've really become immersed in our culture. You want people to have the autonomy to pick their team, but know and understand how you pick that team.
So you've opened multiple locations. I'm sure you all get the question, like, why not just franchise? Why not do that?
Is my short answer. So I worked in for a private equity firm that invested in franchise business, and franchising is a beautiful business model because you basically take a box and you replicate it 10, 100, 1,000 times in strip malls across America and then the world. And the beauty of franchising is the operations are simple, they're codified, and actually there's no room for deviation. And that is the furthest thing from what our industry is and from what we are as makers. So I really am a deep believer that things like handing over the reins of your brand to anyone other than you is a horrible mistake and will end up backfiring because I think consumers are smart enough to see through kind of the bullshit of that.
I mean, I don't think I could have said it more eloquently, but I think I'll add a couple more sprinkles on the cupcake of, you know, people aren't just buying your products, they're buying your experience. So if you're selling your experience, you ought to be in control of that experience as much as humanly possible. So I think long and short, that's it.
If you have questions, 617-336-8560. That's 617-336-8560. Marcus, in Charlotte, you're starting the Harriet Baskerville Incubation Program, which is aimed at creating opportunities in the beer industry for minorities and women. Tell us a little more about that program and how you expect it to help introduce your brand to new drinkers in the city.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I found out that my grandma used to actually brew and distill. So one of the things that the Black Brewers Association really didn't talk about is the historical relevance of blackened beer, right? Beer came from Africa. We'll just keep it real. So, being said that, it's very much been in our history as a people, but then over the course of time, you figure you deal with the progress of the way beer has gone, and we won't go too far into details, but that's where it's gotten diminished from the black community. And then the lack of marketing, the lack of being able to receive financing, the lack of housing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things have led up. But one of the amazing things is that I found out that my grandma and great-grandfather used to brew during Prohibition. So being said that, also my grandma owns a church in Compton. And so very much community driven, very much has been about her city for years upon years. She's 93 years old and as of last year was still doing Sunday school. But being said that, after Black is Beautiful, I kind of grew complacent, right? We did this amazing thing, raised $4.5 million, had all of these breweries support in support of social justice reform. And I grew complacent because we did such an amazing thing and it was like, what's next? For me, being the type of individual that I am, I'm not a very complacent person. And so I was on a Peloton ride and was listening to Day, and she was talking about passion and purpose. What isn't always your passion isn't always your purpose. What's always is your purpose isn't always your passion. But I realized within that conversation that social work, being the forefront of wanting to give back isn't necessarily my passion, but it's definitely became my purpose. And I've put myself in a situation dealing with Black is Beautiful, dealing with our brand, to where I can go and ask for money, or I can go and ask for resources, or ask for all of these things that the normal individual like me hasn't been able to get access to. And so I realized within that, hey, if I can go ahead and give back, then I guess that's going to be my job to go ahead and do so. So Harriet Baskerville Incubation Program is named after my grandma. One of the biggest disparities of what they talked about is we're at less than 1% ownership, right? There's over 9,000 breweries in the United States, and there's less than 70 Black-owned breweries. But then also going into women ownership, it's not that great either, right? So being said that, you look at how mentorships work and different things like that, and it's always cool to put more foot soldiers into the masses, right? But we know where real change is given is the people that have creativity, the people that have ownership, the people that have the decision making, and that's where the disparity is when it comes to Black ownership. So with the incubation program, instead of gearing towards building more brewers or building more taproom employees, we're going to focus on the ownership end. So we brought in some of the top businesses dealing with RAR, White Labs, Yakima Chief, Jägermeister, even though they're not beer, but they do fantastic at marketing and sustainability. We'll be working with SBA loan officers and all of these things to start building individuals into ownership. So they'll start working with some of these brands as far as how to operate the business end of it, how to work with them on the supply chain end. They'll go and work with different marketings to learn about sustainability, how to grow their brand. We'll pair them with SBA loan officers on the financial side, working with some banks. So we're building a partnership with Bank of America right now where they'll be able to work with some of the people in business banking to learn how to go ahead and ask for money or go ahead and secure money on different ends. But the main goal of what this incubation program is to change that narrative of ownership. And you look at the first year, right? I'm hoping out of the 12 people that we bring in, 4 people go to open a brewery. That's already a 60% increase in the amount of ownership that there is. And so you look at that, those are those real changes that we're looking for, right? You can always have the small things that are going to happen, but the real ones are going to be within the ownership end. So working very hard to build that program up. We just brought in a fantastic education director to start working with that. Realized that I can't manage this program on my own, so just brought in a full-time employee for the nonprofit. But hopefully we'll have our first cohort the end of June to start out and hopefully start building from there. So, you know, like the goal of the Michael J. Jackson Foundation is to build more brewers, more individuals that are going to grow within the craft beer. This is going to be more towards the ownership side and trying to build more ownership within beer.
Let's wrap this up with an audience question. When you open a tap room in a new state, are you also looking to have representation in the off-premise in the same market? Is that an expectation that factors into selecting tap room location? So I'll start with Jeff here.
We've done several different ways. In Alabama, we had been operating in wholesale for years before we launched. In Tennessee, it was within a couple years of each other. In Charlotte, we will actually open a tap room before we have wholesale distribution. We're hoping to do it like right around the same time. We don't really think about the specific the real estate in light of what the off-premise or on-premise looks like. It's just they're separate pieces. But we do think about like on the margins. We'll think about what the impact is to our wholesale business in terms of the lift that it could provide. But generally, it's a farther reaching sort of concentric circle on the wholesale side.
Marcus, how important are distributed sales to, building up the tap room?
It's definitely important because it's what's going to give that community recognition to your brand. So for us, we actually distributed in North Carolina or Charlotte prior to opening the tap room. Now the majority has obviously been the tap room, and we've stopped distribution currently. But it's definitely important as far as building the brand, building that brand recognition, and at least getting the community familiar with your brand prior to opening. I mean, you take a random brewery and they're like, oh, well, who's Weathered Souls? So obviously you need to have some type of market sustainability there before you actually physically open.
Yeah, and we had distributed sales in all of our markets before we opened the tap room. As I mentioned earlier, we're in a small market, so a big part of our business strategy from day one when we were more focused on, well, when we were almost exclusively focused on the distribution side, was to kind of expand out and branch out and be relevant and sort of be kind of a first mover in a lot of different markets. And so we sell our beer in 9 states. It's been that way for about 3 years that we've kind of been stopped at 9 states. But then we've kind of come back and backfilled with the tap room. So for us, as our business model, as the market evolved, our business model evolved. And whereas at first it was get out in front on the distribution side to kind of catch up to a lot of the brewers who'd kind of been paved the way and been doing this for a long time. And then once we had our distribution out there, now we've kind of backfilled it with our tap rooms.
One other thought, Justin, is that I'll tell you, like in a year, whether we're idiots or geniuses in terms of North Carolina of opening a tap room around the same time as distribution, I will say it's really changed in terms of new markets. Our ability to, even a brand as big as Monday Night, we're only in 3 states, but we're really deep roots in those 3 states. The conversations with distributors were way easier once they knew that we were opening a tap room in Charlotte. That was not the case years ago. It was, oh, well, you're gonna piss off our on-premise accounts and you're gonna compete with them, and that whole narrative is completely flipped for us. So we actually have got like conversations with distributors that we probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise because of our tap room, which is a totally different thing than what it was, 5-10 years ago.
Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. Adam, Marcus, Jeff, thank you for doing this. Thanks to all of our speakers for coming out. Thanks to the National Black Brewers Association, the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild, our presenting sponsors, Dogfish Head and Ollie by Next Glass. Other sponsors, Arrive Distribution, the E-Premise Group, Encompass, Malt Europe, Pneumatic Scale Angelus, Reyes Beverage Group, and Strike Visuals. Again, thanks to all of you for attending Brew Talks. We'll do this again at CBC. We're going to do this July 12th in Boston, so look out for more information on that. And that's Brew Talks. So we'll see you around CBC. Let's get some beers.